Hey you guys, welcome back to StabilityWOD. Of all the videos I've made so far, the video number 55 about the Serratus Anterior has garnered the most questions. So I wanted to take a second to answer a question from a viewer about how do we get Serratus Anterior to fire on its own so that we can eliminate the lat from the movement pattern. And first thing I'll say is that Serratus Anterior does not work on its own in function. It works with the low trap, it works with the upper trap, and it works with some of the global movers as well. So the goal is not really to get it to fire in isolation, but there are a few things that you can do to assure that Serratus Anterior comes back online. Now it's tricky muscle because we can't see it. Not only can we not see it because it's on our back, but it's also between our shoulder blade and our ribs. So it's one of the harder muscles to feel, to experience in the body. So we do these things assuming that they're going to put the Serratus Anterior in a position where it can do some work without other muscles interrupting, taking over, and compensating for a Serratus Anterior that might be shut down. Now in StabilityWOD 55, this is the exercise I shared. It was pull the band apart, pull the elbows in, and raise the arms slowly with control up to overhead, lowering with the same idea, pulling the band apart, pulling the elbows in to keep the forearms vertical. Now what I like about this movement is it's training the Serratus Anterior above 90 degrees. One of the most important things to know is that it doesn't really kick in until you get above 90 degrees of elevation. So the more we can train it from here up, the better off we're going to be. There's not a lot of value to doing protraction work below 90 degrees, which is why serratus push-ups sometimes aren't the most effective. When a person's lat dominant, they will emphasize the lat too much, and things that we do below 90 degrees tend to engage the lat more than they would above 90 degrees. The other thing to know is that flexion tends to inhibit the lat because the lat does extension. It also does internal rotation of our shoulder, and it does adduction, so it pulls the arm towards the body from the side. So if we go into elevation and we externally rotate and we do things above 90 degrees, we're much more likely to facilitate a weak Serratus Anterior while inhibiting a dominant lat. So while there are tons of ways to tease out the Serratus Anterior with super subtle corrective exercises, those are very difficult to teach on a video, and they're much better done with a therapist or with a trainer, someone that can really help you figure out whether you're substituting with the wrong muscles or not. I mentioned that the scap push-ups, the push-ups in this position, where we're looking at protracting in order to activate the scapula, are sometimes helpful, but because they're done right at 90 degrees of shoulder flexion, we can easily substitute with other muscles. So an alternative to help isolate the Serratus Anterior and help tease it out, get it firing, is to use an incline bench, or I'm just using a foam roll here against the wall to create, to reproduce an incline bench. I'm going to bring a dumbbell. Doesn't have to be super heavy dumbbell because this is a small muscle that's used for control. And of course, the Serratus Anterior works as a team with the low trap, upper trap, as I said, and as a result, we're relying on, in this case, the deltoid and some of the other larger muscles to help us support this load overhead. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to feel my shoulder blade wrap around, kind of just around my lat to make sure A, it's not working, and B, the Serratus Anterior is doing what we want it to do, which is taking the shoulder blade on this side and rotating it upward and outward. So it's going to kind of come out away from our body because I'm above 90 degrees and because I'm in a position where it really needs to be working. So the other job that Serratus Anterior has, in addition to upward rotation, is protraction. So really what I'm doing here is I'm encouraging the Serratus Anterior to upward rotate and protract my scapula in this position. I'm concentrically lifting, I'm eccentrically lowering, I'm monitoring my lat to make sure it's not working too hard, and I'm feeling my scapula to make sure that it's rotating out, upward, and then just protracting a little bit. What I'm not doing is shrugging, because then my upper trap becomes dominant and my Serratus Anterior is going to be at a disadvantage. So we want more of a protraction, almost emphasizing external rotation or turning the thumb back like this in order to inhibit the lat and in order to get the scapula to come away from the body, protract, superiorly rotate. And that feels significantly weaker here than it does here. So you can see the subtlety. I could do this all day long, but as soon as I come to external rotation and I monitor this and I encourage protraction without shrugging, it feels very similar to the exercise that I was doing with the band where you're raising this way. Because the movement's a little more isolated, it's a little bit easier to sort of tease it out and feel what the serratus anterior is doing. I hope this answers your questions, and I hope this starts to demystify the role of the serratus anterior a little bit more. I know it's an ongoing discussion. So once you guys know the rules about how serratus anterior works, I encourage you to get really creative with picking movement patterns that incorporate some of those concepts so that you can tease it out in varying contexts, in varying positions, and during different movement patterns that might be really functional for you or for a client you're working with. Thanks for tuning in to StabilityWOD. Take a second to subscribe, click the like button, leave me some comments, and of course additional questions. I always appreciate that, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.